So we're in our series in Ecclesiastes. It's a journey of a teacher named Kohelet, where he examines different areas of life to see whether they have meaning and significance, value. The book summarizes the teacher's thoughts and journey very quickly at the start of chapter 1. What do people gain from all their labours in which they toil under the sun? We toil for wealth, career, social status and pleasure. But at the end of it, what do they gain? It's really good, life's amazing, but this person's taken a step back and seeing what's being gained here. The teacher's conclusion is quickly summarized as meaningless. The Greek word is Hevel, which means breath, a vapor. It's empty. It's unsatisfactory. And it's like life is like a breath on a cold day. It looks good for a moment. It's got beauty, structure, but it quickly changes. And then it disappears. And what the teacher's doing, he's trying to grab hold of this. And he's opening his hands and he's realizing, this is empty. And the reason for this depression conclusion is that the parameter of his search, and that is under the sun. Meaning that he's tried to find meaning, significance and value apart from God. And he keeps coming to two big problems, death and time. What I didn't say last week, which I probably should have, that this book is found in the Old Testament in the wisdom literature. And it's got a similar sort of structure to Job, if you've read that before. The main body of Job is Job and his three friends. And his three friends are given advice and their thoughts on the reason why Job is suffering. And then at the end of the book, we have God comes in the picture and he gives us divine perspective of Job's suffering. And similar to Ecclesiastes, at the end of the book, you have the author giving perspective to the teacher's theology, which seemed quite dark and depressing. So please hold out to the end. So as you've seen, we've been studying chapter 2, 1 to 17 in our midweek groups. And he starts off, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good." Surely this is a place where he's going to find value. This is what we're told that we're going to find value in and pleasure. And because he's a king, the richest king in the world, he can get anything he wants. Everything was at his disposal. And he kind of conducted an experiment, an orderly experiment, and he ticked everything off. He had the great building projects. He had vineyards, reservoirs, parks, all the wealth you could ever imagine. But at the end, he found it was empty. It was Hevel. He couldn't grab it. Didn't have lasting value. Then he turns his attention to wisdom and folly. Maybe living right will have value. Or maybe living irresponsible. And just being a bit mad. And he knows deep down wisdom is a good thing. But the problem is, the fool and the wise, they both die. Death is the great equalizer, isn't it? They all die. And so the teacher's like, well, what's the point of trying to live rightly? We're both going to die. Why bother? And today he's going to look at time and work. And I've titled today's talk, Responding to Work and Time. And we're going to go through these passages to see how the teacher responds to time and work. And at the end of his response, we're going to see how we should respond as Christians. Okay, so on your sheets, it's chapter 2, 18 to 26. So here we're going to see that death makes toil meaningless, but God allows some to enjoy toil. Verse 18. I hated all things. What a way to start. We all say it, don't we? We all say it. I hate everything. I hated all things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish? Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, into which I poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So I began to despair over all my toilsome labour under the sun. For a person may labour with wisdom, knowledge and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless, a great misfortune. What do people get for all their toil and anxious striving at which they labour under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain, and even at night their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. A person can do no better than eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too I see from the hand of God, for without him who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge and happiness, but to the sinner he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So I have 3 quick points to make here. Firstly, toil is meaningless because you leave it to a fool who hasn't worked for it. They get everything without doing anything. So verse 21, they will have control over all the fruit of my toil into which I poured my effort and skill under the sun. They get everything that we listed out in chapter 2. The vineyards, the reservoirs, the parks, all the gold and silver you can ever imagine without lifting a finger. And for the teacher, this is meaningless. Then it's a double blow for the teacher. Not only that everything he has toiled for is going to vanish in front of him, but it's going to be given to someone who might be a fool. Who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish? And the problem is they're going to have control over everything that he's toiled for. Will he use it well, or will he lose it all? Maybe a lot of you experience inheritance, get an inheritance. And with inheritance, you're meant to take care of it, give it to someone who can, or invest it. For example, this jacket here, it's my dad's jacket. He got it when he was 20, and he gave it to me when I was 20. It's reversible. It's a very good jacket. I can show you, but I won't. And God willing, I'll give it to Micah when he is 20. If Solomon did write Ecclesiastes, then he was right to worry about the one who's going to come after him. Very right. Because his son, Rehoboam, was a fool who lost everything very quickly. And this is Hevel. This is meaningless. So, point 2. Toil is meaningless because it hurts you and you end with nothing. So, verse 22 on your sheets. All the days their work is grief and pain. Even at night their minds do not find rest. This too is meaningless. Work hurts, doesn't it, guys? Many of us are working long hours, either to simply keep a job or get that next step in the career ladder, that crucial next step. And those who are logging long hours at work, barely sleeping, eating unhealthy, we're stressed, resort to smoking or drinking to cope. Millions and millions and millions of people are dying each year because of heart disease related to overworking. People are committing suicide because of overwork. 80% of the UK's workforce have experienced a burnout. And you might know someone like that, or it could be you, who just can't switch off. I asked my wife the other day if she knows anyone, and yeah. You. Yeah. But I know someone who strives for it, okay? Just can't switch off. Just can't switch off. And it hurts them. It really hurts them. And they have very bad coping mechanisms. There's no point in them going on holiday. They're just worried about work. And all this striving is vanity, it's a vapor, it's empty. Why? Because not only it hurts you, it's all going to go to someone else. Verse 26. To the sinner who gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. Some of us work as hard just to keep a job, but some of us work hard to gain wealth. Gain a bit of security for your pension. And we do it in very unhealthy ways. For we brought nothing in the world and we take nothing out of it. The person who was rich and had that big harvest with the barn, that was demanded of him. So, point 3. God allows some people to enjoy toil. And I want you to enjoy this part of the passage, because so far it's going to be pretty flat and dark. And we've got to enjoy these little moments, okay? Enjoy this, guys, okay? Enjoy it, please. I want to see smiles now, okay? Please. So verse 24, a person could do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. So this is the first of 7 passages throughout the book where it suggests that we can have limited enjoyment. Not ultimate satisfaction, but limited enjoyment with the current circumstances of a fallen world. Basically, seize the day. I love having an evening meal after a hard day's work, right? I try to do all my business work, domestic work before I sit down and eat my meal. Because I want to enjoy it. It's done. I can rest. This is a gift from God. God's designed it in that way for you to enjoy that moment. And the teacher says that God's given this gift to some, but he doesn't feel that, in the context, it doesn't look like he's the one who's received this gift. He's the one that's stored up wealth and going to give it to another one. So, responding to time. How does he respond to time then? We're going to look at a poem with 8 verses in it. Chapter 3, 1 to 8. And it has 14 contrasts and opposites. And it's a writing technique used to emphasize completeness. So verse 1 on your sheets. To everything there is a season, a time for a purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck what's planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. The teacher's not making any moral arguments here. He's just simply stating the emotions and the experiences you're going to get from the moment you're born to the moment you die. And I'm sure you can have a different, everyone here is going to have a different reaction to each line in this poem. We've all experienced different things. But what's for certain, God's timing is exact. It says in Job, a person's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months and set limits he cannot exceed. As sad as it is to say, no one dies too early. And we're not going to outlive the days that God has given us. God knows the day when you're going to breathe your last. and he knows when a sparrow is going to fall from the sky. So how does the teacher respond to God's established time periods? Verse 9 to 11 on your sheets. What profit has the worker from that in which he labours? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He's also put eternity in the hearts, except no one can find out what the work that God does from the beginning to the end. The teacher's response is mixed, isn't it? Starts off quite annoying, like, what's the point of all my toil? It doesn't stand up to God's time periods. It's subjected to. Then he has a beautiful reflection. God's creation is beautiful. These periods, there's beauty in this. And he also says a beautiful line, he has put eternity in the hearts. We have eternity in our hearts. We have a need for spiritual hunger. We want to be satisfied spiritually. So we go through this life looking to be satisfied, looking for purpose, looking for meaning, looking for life. And that's what the teacher's doing. He's going through different areas of life. He's trying to find value and purpose in this. And although this sounds beautiful in this context, it's actually his frustration. Because he can't work out what God's doing. If he didn't have eternity in his heart, he wouldn't care what God is up to. He could be less frustrated. So what's his response then to that? Give up trying to fathom God's way. Just rather enjoy the present. So verse 12. I know nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives. And also this and that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all their labour. This is a gift from God. There's nothing better. That's it. He can't achieve anything greater than this. That God will lighten their burden for an evening meal. But it's a great thing that we can live good lives. It says we can do good in their lives. There's a whole lot of people on earth doing good in their lives and enjoying their time. And that's a gift from God. And it's the best they can do in the current circumstance. So he ends his response to time by stating how we should relate to the one who sets the time. We can't change time, so we should fear the one who sets the time. Verse 14 and 15 on your sheets. I know whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, or nothing taken away from it. God does it that men should fear him. That which is has already been, and what is to be has already been, and God requires an account of what is past. Verse 15 sounds like it's talking about judgment, but really is just reinforcing what he's already said in chapter 1, that what has been will be done again. History repeats itself. Everything is frustratingly out of the control of human beings. We can't add to what God is doing, we can't take away from it. And the only thing we should do is fear the one who sets the time. Not in a way of a Christian fear, with the reverence and awe. I would say in the context of how this is written, it's more fear God, your time is nearly up. So, what's the teacher's application for us in all of this? So, in death, so because of death, our toil is taken away from us. So we should just enjoy God's gift of being satisfied at work. And although we have eternity in our hearts, don't try and understand what God is doing, so you can't change it anyway. So in summary, live for today and don't try to understand it. And that's where a whole lot of people are at. Living for today, living for the moment, keep your head down, enjoy, and don't try and understand what God's doing. Maybe later. Got a bit of time. Or when you need to. Not now. So, hopefully there's going to be another peek in today's sermon. How should Christians respond to this passage today? I would say by the one who marked time. There was a time before God became flesh, crucified and resurrected, and there was a time after. Jesus changes everything. And Christians can experience significance in precisely the areas which the teacher was most frustrated in. And the title says, respond to work in time with eternity in your heart. And I find that Ephesians 2:8-10 gives us a good summary of what we should be doing. There on your sheets, at the back. For it's by grace you've been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves, it's a gift from God. Not by works, so no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God has prepared in advance for us to do. We're not saved by works, we're saved for works. We are the fools who haven't worked for it and get everything. We're the fools who haven't worked for it and get everything. For the teacher, God's greatest gift is to lift the burden for an evening to enjoy your time. That's God's greatest gift. But through Jesus, the greatest gift is salvation. That we would be saved from being a fool. Saved from going astray from the holy God, making up your own rules in life, thinking that you're king and Lord of all. And what we're saved from God's righteous judgment for our sin. Our rebellion against him by living a good life? No, by grace. So verse 10, we are God's workmanship. So workmanship is basically the word handiwork. Okay, that's what it means, workmanship. We are God's workmanship to do good works which God prepared in advance. Ultimately, we are God's work, so we should do God's work. Simple. We have been uniquely designed and wired to do good works which God has designed specifically for you. And today is when God's workmanship and God's preparation meet. To engage in it is to engage with the eternal. To not engage with it is to not to see his good, pleasing and perfect will. That's not doing it. But to engage in it is to engage in the eternal and to store up treasures for yourself in heaven. Either God is working through you for someone's salvation or in you for your sanctification. So let's respond to work with time. Respond to work and time with eternity in your hearts. And we do this all the time. All the time. On your sheets, Colossians 3, 23, 24. This is a game changer. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. So I don't mind if you're a doctor, a designer, a cleaner, a pastor. Every task that you do in your life and day to day is for the Lord. Amen. Every task. I'm talking taking the kids to school, washing up, cleaning. Every task can be for the Lord. And why would God care about that? Why would God care about your washing up? Well, man looks at outward appearances, but God looks at the heart. And that's why it matters. So God can see if you're going to be a living sacrifice or not. Everything. And if you understand that and your aim in life is to serve the Lord, God can see you all the time. How much does He love me right now? Is He giving His best for me? Respond to work and time with eternity in your hearts. And lastly, remember that verse we said we looked at earlier, that toil is meaningless because it hurts. So it's not on your sheets. That all their days, their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. equally, the good works that God's called you to do is painful. We're called to deny ourselves, take up a cross and follow him. There's a cost to every good works. Whether it's financial, energy, resources, there is a cost. If there's no cost, it's not a really good work. But why do we do it? Because we know the labour of the Lord is not in vain. And this is really interesting. So on your sheets, 1 Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know the labour of the Lord is not in vain. The word vain means empty, right? And that's the difference between the work that the teacher is describing, that we can do in this life, and the work that God has prepared for us to do. That's the difference. One is empty because at the end of your life it will be taken away from you. So striving for that work is even more empty. Compared to the labour of the Lord, that is not in vain and not empty. Because Christians know the result of their work exceeds their time on earth. It does not disappear. So striving for that work can be enjoyed now. Enjoy it. Enjoy that picnic. But ultimately enjoyed for eternity in heaven. Christians know that God is in charge of time. And we don't just fear God because he's the watchmaker. We trust God with our time. All our time. And unlike the teacher, we know what God's doing at the end of time. That Jesus will return and gather his children who call on his name to spend eternity with him. So let's respond to time and work with eternity in our hearts. Thank you.